Victor stood in his corner office overlooking the bustling streets of Lagos, staring at 3 identical faces that looked exactly like his own. The triplets, 6-year-old children he had never known existed, sat across from him with matching green eyes and the same curly hair he saw in the mirror every morning. His hands trembled as the boy in the middle pushed his glasses up and said calmly, "We're your children. We have DNA proof." Could it be that their mother had tried to reach him all those years ago and he never knew? Hello family, welcome back. Please hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, it really supports our channel. Don't forget to share with your friends and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. And please tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now sit back, relax and enjoy the story. 6 hours earlier, Joyce stared at the email on her laptop, her heart pounding hard in her chest. The DNA results were clear as day, 99.9% match confirmed. Father, Victor Obi. Mom? 6-year-old Tony appeared at her elbow, peering at the screen with curious eyes. Who's Victor Obi? Joyce slammed the laptop shut so fast it nearly caught her fingers. Nobody. Just nobody. Now go do your homework. But Mom? Tony, I swear to God. Go. Now. Fine. He wandered off down the hallway, then called out loudly, Peter. Rose. Mom's hiding something on her computer again. Joyce groaned and dropped her head into her hands. Of course he would do that. Of course. Within seconds, all 3 triplets appeared in the doorway like they had been summoned by magic. Peter, the middle child by 4 minutes, pushed his glasses up his nose with one finger. Is it about our dad? He asked calmly. Because we sent our DNA to that ancestry site 3 weeks ago. Joyce felt her stomach drop to her feet. Her mouth went dry. You did what? It was a science project, Rose said sweetly, her innocent face fooling absolutely no one. Mrs. Johnson said we should explore our heritage. Mrs. Johnson said to use a family tree. Joyce's voice went high with panic. Not a DNA test. Same difference, Tony shrugged like it was no big deal. Anyway, Peter continued, pulling out his tablet with a serious expression. We got the results yesterday. Turns out we're 2% Viking. Pretty cool, right? And, Rose added with a triumphant smile, we found a match. Victor Obi. CEO of Obi Industries. Lives right here in Lagos. Peter swiped his tablet screen and turned it toward his mother. He has your exact eye color, Mom? Which is genetically impossible unless he's our dad, Rose finished, crossing her arms. Joyce sank onto the couch, feeling like the world was spinning around her. 6 years. She had kept this secret buried deep for 6 whole years. And her genius children had cracked it open in just 3 weeks. Okay, she said carefully, trying to keep her voice steady. Yes. Victor Obi is biologically your father. Called it? Tony high-fived Peter with a loud smack. But, Joyce continued firmly, raising her voice, he doesn't know you exist. And we're keeping it that way. 3 identical faces stared at her with confusion written all over them. Why? Rose asked softly. Joyce closed her eyes. How could she explain this to 6-year-olds? How could she tell them about the worst week of her life when she was 23 and stupid? About the assistant who had hung up on her when she tried to share the pregnancy news? About her family disowning her for getting pregnant without being married? It's complicated, she said lamely. Mom? Peter adjusted his glasses in that way that meant he was about to destroy her argument with pure logic. We're 6. We're not babies anymore. We deserve to meet our biological father. He might be rich, Tony added with excitement in his eyes. We could have a pool. I just want to know where I got my hair from, Rose said, touching her curly hair that was nothing like Joyce's straight black hair. From him, Joyce admitted quietly. You all have his hair. And his stubborn chin. And his annoying ability to argue about everything. So we're going to meet him, right? Tony pressed, leaning forward eagerly. No. Why not? Because I said so. That's not a real reason, Peter said calmly. It's the only reason you're getting. Joyce stood up, her voice final. Now go do your homework. All of you. They left, but she could hear them whispering in the hallway. This wasn't over. Not even close. What Joyce didn't know was that her children had already made a plan, and in 2 days, everything would change forever. 2 days later, Joyce was making dinner when her phone rang. The screen showed an unknown number. She wiped her hands on her apron and answered carefully. Hello, Ms. Joyce, a professional female voice said. This is Angela Cole, executive assistant to Victor Obi. Mr. Obi would like to schedule a meeting with you regarding a personal matter. Joyce's wooden spoon clattered into the pot of jollof rice. Her heart stopped beating for a moment. "I'm sorry, what?" she managed to say. He received some interesting correspondence this week from 3 children claiming to be his biological offspring, Angela explained calmly. "He would like to discuss this with you directly." "Those little—" Joyce stopped herself, gripping the phone tighter. "They wrote to him?" "Extensively," Angela replied. "With DNA results, photographs, and a very detailed PowerPoint presentation titled, 'Why Victor Obi Should Acknowledge His Children.' It was quite thorough, I must say." "I'm going to kill them," Joyce muttered under her breath. "I'm sorry?" "Nothing. Listen, there's been a misunderstanding. Mr. Obi is available tomorrow at 2 p.m. at his office in Victoria Island," Angela continued smoothly. "Or he can come to you if you prefer. I prefer he forgets this entire thing." "I'm afraid that's not an option." Angela's voice was kind but firm. The children were very convincing, particularly the one named Peter. He included peer-reviewed articles on paternity and parental responsibility. "Of course he did," Joyce said, closing her eyes in frustration. "Fine. Tomorrow at 2. But the kids don't come. Actually, Mr. Obi specifically requested they attend. He would like to meet them." "Absolutely not. Miss Joyce," Angela said carefully, "with all due respect, they've already met him." Joyce's blood ran completely cold. The kitchen seemed to spin around her. "What?" "They showed up at his office yesterday after school. Security called me down and, well, they're very persuasive children. Mr. Obi spoke with them for approximately 30 minutes before I discovered what was happening and sent them home in a car." "They what?" Joyce could barely breathe. "They took a bus downtown and talked their way past security?" "Quite resourceful, actually." Joyce was going to have a stroke. Or a heart attack. Maybe both at the same time. "Put him on the phone," she demanded. "Now." "One moment, please." There was a pause, then a male voice came on the line. It was smooth and infuriatingly calm. "Miss Joyce. It's been 6 years." Joyce's hands shook so hard she almost dropped the phone. She remembered that voice. Confident. The kind that made bad decisions sound perfectly reasonable. "You had no right to meet them without my permission," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "They showed up uninvited," Victor replied simply. "Was I supposed to throw children out of my building?" "Yes." "They're very charming," he continued, ignoring her outburst. "Tony told me about his science fair project on renewable energy. Peter explained cryptocurrency to me. I actually learned something. And Rose drew me a picture of a unicorn. It's on my desk right now." "They ambushed you," Joyce said. "They introduced themselves. There's a difference." He paused. "They look like me, Joyce. They have my hair, my eyes, my—" "Your insufferable need to be right about everything," Joyce snapped. "I was going to say my smile," Victor said quietly. "But sure, that too." Joyce leaned against the kitchen counter, feeling tears threatening to fall. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. "I don't want you in their lives," she said firmly. "Too late," Victor replied. "They're already in mine. Because they tricked you." "No." His voice became serious. "Because they're my children. And I had no idea they existed. Were you ever going to tell me?" "I tried 6 years ago," Joyce said, her voice breaking. "Your assistant said you were unavailable and hung up on me." There was a long silence on the other end. "What assistant?" Victor finally asked. "I don't know her name. Blonde woman. Very rude. Rebecca." His voice went hard as stone. "She was fired 4 years ago for multiple issues. I never got any message about a pregnancy." "Well, I wasn't going to try again," Joyce said bitterly. "You made it clear you didn't want to be bothered." "I made nothing clear because I didn't know." Victor took a deep breath. "Look, tomorrow at 2. Bring the kids. We'll talk like adults. I don't want them getting attached to you." "They're already attached," Victor said. "Tony asked if I liked video games. Peter asked about my investment portfolio. And Rose asked if I was married." Despite everything, Joyce felt curious. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. Yes to video games. Diversified portfolio. And no, I'm not married. Never have been, actually." That stopped Joyce cold. "In 6 years you've never dated seriously?" "No. My business doesn't leave much time for relationships." Joyce didn't know what to say to that. "They're incredible, Joyce," Victor said softly. "Smart, funny, confident. You've done an amazing job raising them." The compliment hit her heart unexpectedly hard. "Thank you," she whispered. "So tomorrow. Will you come?" Joyce looked toward the living room where 3 pairs of eyes were definitely listening behind the doorway. Would she risk opening her heart and her children's lives to a man who could break them both? Grace hung up the phone and turned to find all 3 kids standing in the doorway, not even pretending they hadn't been listening to every word. "You 3, she said slowly, her voice dangerously calm, "are in so much trouble. But we're meeting Dad tomorrow." Tony pumped his fist in the air with excitement. "He's not your dad. He's Victor. He said we could call him Dad if we wanted," Peter said matter-of-factly. "Also, he's sending a car for us. With snacks. He has an aquarium in his office," Rose added, her eyes shining. "With actual fish." Joyce pointed at each of them one by one. You. And you. Grounded. "For how long?" Tony asked innocently. "Forever." "That's not specific," Peter noted, pushing his glasses up. "Bet. No. All of you." They scattered like leaves in the wind, but Joyce heard Tony whisper loudly, "Totally worth it." Joyce poured herself a very large glass of water and tried to figure out how her carefully controlled life had just exploded into a million pieces. The next day arrived too quickly. The car Victor sent was absolutely ridiculous. A black Mercedes with leather seats and, as promised, snacks everywhere. "Mom, there's sparkling water." Rose gasped, her hands touching the bottles carefully. "And fancy cookies," Tony added, his mouth already full. Peter was reading the car's manual with serious concentration. "This vehicle costs approximately 20 million naira. Dad's doing well for himself," Tony said with his mouth full. "Stop calling him Dad," Joyce said tiredly. "What? He's literally our father. Biology doesn't equal parenting." "But it's a start," Rose said wisely, sounding way too much like a tiny therapist. The Obi Industries building was all glass and steel, towering over Victoria Island like a giant. They were escorted through the lobby, past security guards who waved at the kids like old friends, which was deeply alarming. Angela Cole met them at the executive floor. She was elegant, professional, and clearly amused by the whole situation. "Miss Joyce, children. Mr. Obi is expecting you." They were led to a massive corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, and yes, an aquarium built right into the wall. Victor stood behind his desk and Joyce's breath caught in her throat. He looked exactly the same. Tall, curly hair, sharp green eyes, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her rent for 6 months. 6 years hadn't diminished him at all. If anything, he was more handsome, more confident, more everything she remembered from that one reckless night. "Joyce," he said, his voice warm like sunshine. "Victor." Then the kids rushed past her like a small hurricane. "Dad, you got a new fish." Rose pressed her face against the aquarium glass. "That's a clownfish," Victor said, smiling down at her. "Her name is Nemo." "Very original," Peter observed dryly. "Did you name her or did Angela?" Tony asked with a grin. "Angela," Victor admitted. "I wanted to call her Fish." "That's terrible." Tony laughed so hard he bent over. Joyce watched, completely stunned, as Victor crouched down to the kids' level, showing them the aquarium and explaining each fish with patience and care. They were comfortable with him. Easy. Natural. Like they had known him their entire lives. How did this happen after just one meeting? "Miss Joyce," Angela appeared at her elbow like a ghost. "Can I get you coffee? Water? Something stronger?" "Something much stronger," Joyce muttered. Angela almost smiled. "I'll bring coffee." Victor finally turned to Joyce, his green eyes meeting hers. "Thanks for coming." "Did I have a choice?" "Not really. Your children are very persistent." "I wonder where they got that from," Joyce said, raising one eyebrow. "Definitely not from me," Victor said with a straight face. "I'm very flexible and easygoing." Even the kids snorted at that obvious lie. Victor gestured to a comfortable seating area near the windows, a large couch and chairs arranged perfectly. They all settled in, and somehow the kids ended up on either side of Victor like they had assigned seats. "So," Victor began carefully, "we should probably talk about everything." "I didn't know you didn't get my message 6 years ago," Joyce said quietly. "If you had known, what would you have done differently?" Joyce thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe tried harder to reach you." "Why didn't you?" "Because I was 23, pregnant with triplets, and my family had just disowned me for getting pregnant out of wedlock," Joyce said, her voice shaking slightly. "I was working 2 jobs and barely surviving. Chasing down a billionaire who made it clear through his assistant that he wasn't interested didn't seem like a priority." Victor's jaw tightened with anger. "I would have helped if I had known." "Would you?" Joyce challenged. You were building an empire. I was a one-night stand. Why would you care? Because they're my children, Victor said simply, looking at Tony, Peter, and Rose. I didn't know they existed. Now I do. And everything is different. Nothing has to be different, Joyce insisted stubbornly. We've been fine without you. We'll continue being fine. Mom, Tony interrupted loudly, maybe we don't want to be just fine. Maybe we want to be great. With Dad's help, Rose added softly. And his money, Peter said practically, like he was discussing the weather. Peter? Joyce gasped, her face burning with embarrassment. What? I'm being honest. We're broke, Mom. I've seen the bills. And Dad has money. That's just facts. Victor's face did something complicated, part sad, part angry, part determined. What would Joyce do now that her children had revealed the truth she'd been hiding? You're struggling financially, Victor said, his voice tight with emotion. We're fine, Joyce said quickly, her pride rising up like a wall. She works 3 jobs, Tony replied helpfully, completely ignoring his mother's warning look. 2 jobs, Joyce corrected sharply. And barely manages, Peter added, adjusting his glasses. Last month we ate rice and stew for a week straight. Because I was trying a new recipe, Joyce lied badly. Mom, you cried when the electricity bill came, Rose said gently, her small voice cutting through the tension. Victor stood up abruptly, walking to the window. His hands were clenched into fists. Why didn't you ask for help? He asked, his back still turned. From who? Joyce's voice broke slightly. My family disowned me. I have no friends with money. And I didn't know you knew about the kids until 2 days ago. Victor spun around, his green eyes blazing. You've been raising triplets alone for 6 years. Working multiple jobs. Struggling to keep the lights on. His voice rose with each word. Joyce, they're my children too. I could have helped. I should have helped. You didn't know, Joyce said tiredly, feeling exhausted down to her bones. It's not your fault. It's Rebecca's fault, Victor said darkly. And when I find her. Can we focus on now? Peter interrupted, ever the logical one. The past is unchangeable. The future is not. I propose we establish a co-parenting arrangement with financial support and scheduled visitation. Everyone stared at him in complete silence. You're 6, Joyce finally said. I'm 6 and practical, Peter replied calmly. Dad has resources. We need resources. Dad wants a relationship with us. We want a relationship with him. This is simple mathematics. It's not math. It's life. I agree with Peter, Victor said, sitting back down closer to Joyce this time. Of course you do, Joyce muttered. Victor leaned forward, his eyes serious and sincere. Let me help. Please. I'm not trying to take over or replace you. But I can make things easier. Better. For all of you. I don't want your charity, Joyce said firmly. It's not charity. It's child support, Victor replied. Which I should have been paying all along. Child support? Joyce's voice went high and shrill. You want to just write me checks? Among other things, Victor said. I also want to be part of their lives. Take them places. Help with school. Be their father. You can't just become their father because you want to. Dad. Rose tugged on Victor's sleeve with her small hand. Can we go to the aquarium? The big one? Mom keeps saying it's too expensive. The National Museum, Tony added eagerly. And Lecky Conservation Center. And that fancy restaurant by the water, Peter said. We'll go to all of them, Victor promised without hesitation. Victor, Joyce said warningly. What? I'm taking my kids out. That's what fathers do. You're not their father. DNA doesn't lie. All 3 kids shouted in perfect unison. Joyce looked at Victor, who was definitely trying not to laugh at the situation. Did you teach them that? She asked. No, but I'm using it, Victor said with a grin. DNA doesn't lie, Joyce. I'm their father. You can fight it all you want, but that's the truth. And I'm not going anywhere. This is insane, Joyce said, shaking her head. This is life, Victor countered. Messy, complicated, unexpected life. But we're going to figure it out together. You say that now, Joyce said bitterly. Wait until you're sleep-deprived and dealing with homework battles and someone's throwing up at 2 in the morning. They're 6, not infants. You have no idea what you're signing up for. Then teach me, Victor said earnestly. Let me learn. Let me be their father. Why? Joyce's voice cracked like breaking glass. Why do you even want this? You're a CEO. You have freedom, money, success. Why would you want 3 chaotic kids and their broke, exhausted mother complicating everything? Victor looked at Tony, Peter, and Rose for a long moment. Then back at Joyce. Because I've spent 6 years building a company, he said quietly. And it's empty. This, he gestured to the kids, this is real. This matters. And I've already missed 6 years. I'm not missing any more. Joyce felt tears threatening to spill down her cheeks. If you hurt them. I won't, Victor promised. I swear it. Promises are easy. Then let me prove it with actions. He pulled out his phone and pressed a button. Angela, clear my calendar for the next 2 weeks. Family time. Victor, that's not. 2 weeks, he repeated firmly. To show you I'm serious. To let the kids get to know me. To figure this out. I have to work, Joyce protested weakly. Take vacation. I'll cover your lost wages. I don't want your money. Too bad. My kids aren't eating rice and stew for a week while I'm sitting on millions. But Mom, Tony said quietly, his voice small and hopeful. Let him try. Please. Joyce looked at her 3 children, brilliant, funny, stubborn, perfect, staring at her with such hope in their eyes. She was so tired of doing this alone. 2 weeks, she said finally. Trial run. Then we reevaluate. Victor's smile was absolutely blinding. Deal. But rules? Joyce said firmly. My rules. You follow them or this ends immediately. Agreed. And if at any point the kids are uncomfortable, we stop. No questions asked. I get it. Their happiness comes first. Always. Joyce nodded, feeling like she had just signed away control of her carefully built life. Victor turned to the kids with excitement in his eyes. So what should we do first? Aquarium, they all shouted together. Aquarium it is. Everyone free now. We have school, Peter said responsibly. I'll call it in as an educational field trip. You can do that? Rose's eyes went impossibly wide. I'm a major donor. They'll allow it. That's nepotism, Peter observed seriously. That's privilege, Victor corrected with a smile. And we're using it for good. Come on. As they headed toward the door, Tony grabbed Victor's hand naturally. Rose took his other hand. Peter walked beside them, already asking detailed questions about Victor's business. Anne Joyce followed behind, watching her carefully separated worlds collide like thunder and lightning. Could she really trust this man with the most precious parts of her heart? 3 months passed like a beautiful dream that Joyce kept waiting to end. But it didn't end. Victor showed up every single day, learning how to be a father with determination and patience. He learned that Tony liked his sandwiches cut diagonally, not straight across. He discovered that Peter needed exactly 3 bedtime stories, no more and no less. He figured out that Rose only ate foods with the letter R on Tuesdays for reasons she refused to explain to anyone. He had become part of their lives in a way Joyce hadn't thought was possible. Now they sat in his apartment, a luxury penthouse in Ikoyi that made Joyce's small flat look like a storage room. Wednesday had somehow become family dinner night without anyone officially deciding it. The custody arrangement had evolved naturally and organically. Kids stayed with Joyce most weeknights. Victor took them on weekends. But he showed up for dinner at least 3 times a week anyway, unable to stay away. Dad, you're doing it wrong, Tony said, watching Victor attempt to braid Rose's hair for the 5th time. There's a technique to this, Victor muttered, his fingers tangled hopelessly in curly hair. How do you make it stay? Mom uses magic, Rose said helpfully, sitting perfectly still. I use hair ties and prayer, Joyce called from the kitchen where she was making jollof rice. Joyce rescued the half-destroyed braid with practiced hands. Like this. Over, under, pull tight. See? Victor watched with intense concentration. Can you do that in slow motion? Can you negotiate million-naira deals in slow motion? That's different. How? Joyce asked with a smile. Contracts don't squirm. I don't squirm. Rose protested, immediately squirming. Peter looked up from his homework at the dining table. Dad, can you help with my math? What level? Pre-algebra. You're 6, Victor said, though he didn't sound surprised anymore. And you're shocked why? Peter asked innocently. Victor laughed and moved to the table. Joyce finished Rose's braid and started preparing dinner, jollof rice and chicken, which had become Victor's favorite since she taught him how to make it properly. This was normal now. Comfortable. Easy. The 4 of them, 5 including her, moving around each other like they had been doing it for years instead of months. Mom, Tony appeared suddenly at her elbow. Can Dad come to my school presentation next week? Of course. He's your father. Yeah, but will it be weird having both of you there? Joyce paused, her wooden spoon hovering over the pot. Why would it be weird? Because Timothy's parents are divorced and they won't even sit in the same room together. Your dad and I aren't married, Joyce explained carefully. We can't be divorced. But you were together once, right? Tony pressed. All activity in the apartment stopped immediately. Victor looked at Joyce. Joyce looked at the jollof rice. The kids looked at both of them with curious eyes. We had a brief relationship, Joyce said slowly, choosing her words like stepping stones across a river. 6 years ago. It resulted in you three. Then we went our separate ways. Why? Peter asked, always needing logical explanations. Joyce struggled for words. How could she explain a drunken one-night stand to 6-year-olds? We weren't ready for a relationship, Victor replied smoothly, saving her. We barely knew each other. But that one night gave us you three. Best accident ever. Were accidents? Rose gasped dramatically. Happy accidents, Joyce said quickly. Like when you mix paint colors and discover something beautiful. That usually makes brown, Peter said scientifically. Bad example. You're kind of brown though, Tony observed. That's not the point. Joyce was floundering badly. Victor rescued her again. What your mom means is that sometimes the best things in life are completely unexpected. We didn't plan you. But we wouldn't change it for anything in the world. Would you date now? Tony asked suddenly. If you met today? The question hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. That's, Joyce started. Complicated, Victor finished. Everything with you two is complicated, Peter observed with a heavy sigh. That's because they like each other, Rose said in a loud whisper. But they're scared. We're not scared, Joyce and Victor said at exactly the same time. The kids exchanged knowing looks that were far too wise for 6-year-olds. Sure, Tony said with obvious disbelief. Whatever you say. Later that night, after the kids were asleep in Victor's guest rooms he had decorated specifically for them, Joyce and Victor sat on the balcony overlooking the glittering lights of Legos. They're getting ideas, Joyce said softly. I know. We need to be careful. I know that too. Victor turned to look at her, his green eyes reflecting the city lights. But Joyce, would it be so terrible? If we tried. Tried what? Being more than co-parents. Joyce's heart started beating faster. Victor. I know it's complicated, he interrupted gently. I know you're scared. Hell, I'm terrified too. But these past 3 months have been the best of my life. And it's not just because of the kids. Don't, Joyce whispered. It's because of you too, Victor continued anyway. The way you laugh at my terrible cooking. The way you correct my parenting mistakes without making me feel stupid. The way you've let me into your life even though I know how hard that was. Victor, please. I'm falling for you, Joyce, he said simply. Or maybe I already fell. I don't know. But I know I don't want to keep pretending this is just about the kids. Joyce stood up abruptly, her hands shaking. I can't do this. Not now. Maybe not ever. Why not? Because. She spun to face him, tears streaming down her face. Because I'm terrified of you realizing I'm not enough. That I'm just the broke single mother you got pregnant during one reckless night. That 6 months from now you'll be bored and I'll be heartbroken and the kids will be devastated. Victor stood too, closing the distance between them. Look at me. Victor. Joyce, look at me. She did, her vision blurry with tears. You are not just anything, he said fiercely. You're brilliant, fierce, funny, and the best mother I've ever seen. You raised 3 genius kids completely alone. You built a life from absolutely nothing. You're everything. You don't mean that. I absolutely mean that, Victor said, taking her hands in his. I've spent 3 months trying to prove it. Showing up. Learning. Being present. What more do I need to do? I don't know, Joyce whispered. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'm just too broken to believe good things can happen to me. You're not broken. You're careful. There's a huge difference. He squeezed her hands gently. But Joyce, at some point you have to decide. Are you going to let fear win? Or are you going to take a chance on something real? What would Joyce choose, safety or the terrifying possibility of love? Joyce stood there on the balcony, her hands still held in Victor's warm grip, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The lights of Lagos twinkled below them like a million stars had fallen to earth. I'm scared, she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I know, Victor said softly. So am I. What if it doesn't work? What if it does? Joyce took a deep breath and nodded slowly. Okay, let's try. For real. Victor's smile was brighter than all the lights of Lagos combined. Yeah. But slow. Really, really slow. As slow as you need, Victor promised. The following week, Tony had his school presentation. Joyce arrived early and found Victor already sitting in the back row, looking handsome in a casual shirt that probably still cost a fortune. As Tony presented his project on renewable energy, another parent leaned over and whispered to Joyce, "You two are so lucky. Still getting along so well for the kids." "We're not divorced," Joyce said. "We're just figuring things out." After the presentation, Tony ran to both of them with the biggest smile on his face. "You both came. Timothy's parents couldn't even be in the same room, but mine sat together. I'm basically winning at life." 2 weeks later came the incident that changed everything. Joyce was at work when the school called. Tony had punched another boy named Timothy for saying Joyce had trapped Victor with babies for money. When Joyce arrived at the principal's office, Victor was already there, looking angrier than she had ever seen him. Timothy's mother was also present, looking defensive and embarrassed. "Your son needs to learn that spreading lies has consequences," Victor said coldly to Timothy's mother. "Molly didn't trap anyone. I've been searching for her. She asked for nothing. Every naira I spend on our children is my choice and my joy." After they left the school, Victor did something Joyce didn't expect. He issued a public statement through his company, clarifying everything about their relationship and making it clear that Joyce and the children were his family. "You didn't have to do that," Joyce said softly. "Yes, I did," Victor replied firmly. "I'm tired of people making assumptions. You're not just the mother of my children, Joyce. You're important to me. Very important." That night, sitting in her small apartment after the kids were asleep, Victor took Joyce's hands again. "Go on a date with me," he said. "A real one. Just us. No kids." Joyce's heart fluttered. "Just one date. To start with," Victor said with a smile. "Then we'll see where it goes." Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant in Victoria Island. Over jollof rice and chicken, because Victor insisted on Nigerian food, they talked like they never had before. About dreams, fears, hopes, and futures. "I wanted to be a teacher," Joyce admitted. "Before everything happened." "You still can," Victor said. "I'll help with tuition, childcare, whatever you need." "Victor. Partners help each other," he interrupted gently. "Aren't we partners now?" Joyce smiled, tears forming in her eyes. "Yeah, I guess we are." Over the next 6 months, their relationship grew slowly and steadily. Victor learned how to braid Rose's hair properly. He mastered bedtime routines. He became not just a father to the children, but a true partner to Joyce. He was there for homework battles and midnight fevers. For school events and grocery shopping. For the boring, mundane, beautiful moments that made up real life. One Sunday morning, after the kids had served them hilariously burnt breakfast in bed, Victor looked at Joyce with serious eyes. "Ask me again in 6 months," Joyce had once told him about marriage. "It's been 6 months," Victor said softly. Joyce looked at him, this man who had shown up every single day, who had proven his love through actions, not just words, who had become her partner in every sense of the word. "Yes," she whispered. "I haven't asked yet," Victor laughed. "Then ask." Victor got down on one knee right there in his bedroom, still in his pajamas, with burnt toast crumbs on the sheets. "Joyce, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing up for you and our kids? Will you be my partner, my love, my family, officially?" "Yes," Joyce said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, yes, yes." The kids, who had obviously been listening at the door, burst in screaming with joy. 1 year later, they married in a small garden ceremony in Lekki. The children stood between them during the vows because they weren't just marrying each other, they were making official what had been true for a long time. They were a family. "We're not just marrying each other," Victor said through tears. "We're celebrating what these 3 amazing children created. A family built on love, patience, and showing up every single day." At the reception, the children gave a speech roasting their parents' terrible flirting skills, and everyone laughed until they cried. Later, dancing under string lights with Victor's arms around her and 3 children running around stealing cake, Joyce thought about how one terrible night 7 years ago had led to this moment. 3 genius children who refused to accept no for an answer. DNA tests and PowerPoint presentations. Burnt breakfasts and braided hair. Homework battles and midnight talks. This was their story, messy, chaotic, unexpected, and absolutely perfect. Because family isn't about biology or perfect circumstances. It's about choosing each other every single day. About loving bigger than you thought possible. About showing up, trying hard, and never giving up. And as Joyce looked at Victor and their 3 beautiful children, she knew one thing for certain. Sometimes the best things in life are completely unplanned. And she wouldn't change a single thing. We've come to the end of today's story. I hope it touched your heart. Thanks for watching and staying with us till the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. See you in the next one. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from?